I recently had to take about 3 months off from crochet because, drum roll, I hurt my shoulder crocheting. Not officially, but I'm pretty sure I hurt my shoulder crocheting, and it's entirely my fault because when I like something, I really go ham, and when I started crocheting 2 years ago, I started getting some pains in my wrists and in my fingers. In fact, this finger, I have like trigger finger from crocheting because I use it a lot to manipulate the yarn when I'm crocheting. So sometimes when I close my fist, it's hard to unlock this finger. Anyway, I feel like these are really common crochet injuries or whatever you call them. How I would deal with this when I started crocheting was here and there, I would take a couple of days off, a week off from crochet. And just like any muscle or joint you start training, eventually it strengthens and it catches up. But I thought maybe I'd dive too quickly into the hobby. Recently, though, I did start to feel a little bit more strain in my left shoulder, and I think it's because of the way I sit. When I crochet, I sit in a hard back chair. I actually prefer hard back library chairs to ergonomic chairs because my feet touch the floor. They're not soft, they don't move around so much. So I crochet in a hard back chair, which I thought was fine. And then my left shoulder started to hurt. So I intentionally took 2-ish, 3-ish months off of crochet, and I started to do more shoulder strengthening exercises in the gym just with dumbbells. I follow this guy on TikTok and Instagram called Squat University. I think he's based out of the Midwest, and he trains people on balance, on left side, right side balance, and on strengthening muscles. So I have been doing some of those isolating exercises, and it's gotten a little bit better. So a couple of days ago, I started crocheting again, and this is the first project I'm doing in a while. I've been looking around for a summery project. Obviously, yarn um, is not a typical summer fabric. I guess linen and cotton maybe, but I don't really like it when I work in linen and cotton. I don't like that kind of rough feel. I have tried and it's not really my favorite. So I thought if I chose a summer color, I could get into crochet again. I've been looking around for a tie-dye yarn and I haven't really found one. I love this yarn in the colorway Bloom Teak. So it's a very pretty variegated pastelly blue, green, pink, cream acrylic. It is super soft. I picked up a few skeins of these. The first Hobby Lobby in New York City just opened in Staten Island, so I took the bus all the way to Staten Island and I picked up a few skeins of this yarn. It's my first time working with I Love This Yarn. I really like it. It's always nice to try something new. I also love working on raglan sweaters. Although I have not successfully done a raglan sweater, I've made a lot of raglan sweaters, but they just don't fit my body type. I am an apple body type, so I carry a lot of weight around my stomach and my back. And unfortunately, raglan sweaters tend to be kind of boxy on me. Although, when I found this pattern, which is a free pattern from Ravelry that I will link in the description box so you can try it yourself. I don't know if this is going to work out yet, but I'm about like a quarter of the way through and it looks really promising because of this one technique. So this is what it looks like so far. I just started doing this yesterday. This is a raglan pattern. It is kind of a wide neckline. And I'm sorry about the presence of this base in this video because this overhead camera stand, I can't figure out how to adjust it so you don't see the base. I've tried putting it under my desk, but then it's just all wrong. Anyway, you can also sort of see it at the top of this thing here. It's just right here. I gotta work on my camera setup. So this raglan sweater is done from obviously the top down because it's raglan. I followed the pattern which calls for a foundation double crochet. They're 99 at the top, and then it's 19 double crochets, V-stitch, 29 double crochets, V-stitch, 19 double crochets, V-stitch, 29 double crochets, V-stitch, and you just join it like that. This is where it's joined. You can see, I mean, it bothers me sometimes with raglans where you don't reverse. You can sort of see where the join is, but it's okay. I don't think it's as obvious in a variegated yarn. The technique that I think could make this sweater different fitting and better fitting potentially than other raglan sweater patterns I've tried, especially for apple-shaped body types like mine, is this thing where 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8 rows into the raglan where it's all just double crochet. So you're just double crocheting. It's very easy to learn if you know how to double crochet. All of a sudden, and I didn't know how this would turn out, but I was like, I'll just go with it. And if it's bad, I will frog it. All of a sudden, in row 9, you see how it looks like it's different stitches? In row 9, the pattern asks you to put 2 double crochets in every stitch. So it not only does it give you more space, right? So you can see all of a sudden the sweater is a lot more roomy. It also gives it this really pretty kind of like ruffly shape. I know it won't come out ruffle in the end because when you wear it, gravity will just naturally pull it down. I'll insert a photo from the pattern here so you can see what it looks like on the model. But what it does is it gives a shape to the sweater where the sweater has its own sort of thing going on instead of just like sitting on top of your body and clinging to the parts of your body that you may not want it to emphasize or cling to. Anyway, so I thought that was pretty cool. It really changes the look of the sweater, right? It looks like it's 2 different stitches. In fact, when I looked at the photo from the pattern, as I was going along doing this top part, I was like, I don't know if I'm doing this right because the top looks so different than row 9. But it's just a matter of doing 2 double crochets in every stitch instead of just 1 double crochet in every stitch as you go along in the raglan pattern. So I thought for this video, I would do a little chit chat and I would do a few more rows here. It does take a while because raglan takes a while because you're going in the round, but these are the crochet videos that I like to watch. So here we are. So again, like I said, I love this yarn in Bloom Teak. It calls for a 5.5mm crochet hook. I am not using a 5.5, I'm using a 5. After using so many different brands and kinds of crochet hooks over the last few years, and obviously I have not used all of them, there's so many I have not tried. For a long time, my favorite brand was Tulip, and I still really do like Tulip, although what I have found is that with slightly heavier yarns, I prefer a slightly longer hook. So I've gone back to the basics. This is just a classic loops and threads 5mm aluminum hook that I got from Michael's, probably one of the first hooks I ever bought. I really like it because the length is really, really good. And I think for manipulating slightly heavier yarns, it's helpful to have that length. Literally just have that torque, I guess that's what they call it in physics, just to have the leverage. Whereas with lighter yarns, I really like using Tulip because the hook is deeper and it's slightly pointier, so it's easier to get through without splitting the yarn. Recently, I saw some crocheters say they like the microchet hooks, and so I think I might try those next. Although I'm not super crazy about the silicone handles in general because I feel like they get a little sticky and sometimes they can just feel a little dirty. I feel like constantly I need to clean them. I am since the pandemic, I have been a little bit of a wet ones slash Clorox wipes aficionado slash freak. So I'm one of those people at the gym who is constantly carrying around cleaning supplies and wiping everything down before I use it. I saw on TikTok that a lot of gyms now, a lot of people are catching skin funguses, especially because it's summer and everyone's skin is exposed. People are getting skin funguses at the gym. It's it's almost enough to make you not wanna go to the gym, but I am not rich enough to afford a home gym, and my apartment is tiny. I live in New York City, and I live in a tiny apartment. So, for now, I am a dedicated gym goer, but I am one of those people who carries wet wipes all over the gym. I wipe everything down before and after I use it. I mean, so far, knock on wood, it's been okay, but I have seen those scary gym fungus videos, and I don't know how. My gym has a swimming pool. It's closed now for renovations, but I don't know how, and this kind of freaks me out. I don't know how people walk around a gym locker room without shoes on, just barefoot. I think it's super gross. I just don't know how people do that. Not only do people sometimes walk around locker rooms without shoes on, I have also noticed that there are some people who walk around the entire gym without shoes on, even though the swimming pool is closed. I'm like, where are you going? Why don't you have shoes on in the weights area? What if a dumbbell falls on your foot? Not like a sneaker is really going to protect your foot, but it's better than nothing. And also, the floor is dirty because people are treading things in from outside. I don't know. I don't understand that. That is something added to my list of things I don't really understand. It has been so hot in New York recently, which is one of the reasons why I think I have been like quitting crochet for 3 months wasn't hard for me because it has been so hot this week, especially, even though it's only technically in the 80s. Yesterday, when I was out, I was just standing at the bus stop and I was like, what is happening? It felt like I was in a steam room. There was like sweat pouring out of my face. I sweat a lot on my face. So today I thought about going outside and I was like, no, I looked at the weather report. And I was like, I don't know if it's worth going outside today. Plus, New York is going through something right now. I know a lot of the politicians are saying that New York is safer, but it's not. I've lived here for almost my entire life, and even in the early 90s and late 80s when New York felt really unsafe and crime on the subway was at an all-time high, it never felt like this. It's a different kind of unsafe. I feel like when I was a teenager here, people, if you got mugged or something happened to you on the street, there was, like, a reason, and it was not, it's obviously not the victim's fault, but it's usually because the person who's mugging you wanted your Walkman or wanted something that you had or wanted your sneakers. Now, when people are victims of crimes, and I'm, like, obsessed with it because I can't stop looking at it, but there's this app called Citizens app or Citizen app. If you come to New York as a visitor, or if you live here, you probably have it on your phone, but if you come as a visitor, I think it's worth downloading because you don't have to subscribe. It doesn't cost anything. There is a subscription version, but you don't need to have that version to see what's going on. It's a live crime map based on where you are at the moment. You can also look all across the country. So I could look at San Francisco now if I wanted to, or LA, but it's based on police radio. It's based on people reporting things in their neighborhoods. There's usually video or photos. The community is quite funny because it's a lot like peanut gallery commentary, but it does show you where crimes are happening in real time in New York, which I think is really helpful. And unfortunately, right now in New York, I do this thing where I live in a really busy neighborhood. So I do this thing where if I even have to go to the supermarket, and I have a hard time explaining this to people who don't live here, before I go to the supermarket, I look on the Citizen app at the map to see if someone has been stabbed recently on my block because it happens every day. I don't live in a neighborhood that's known to be a dangerous neighborhood. I just live in a busy central neighborhood. And unfortunately, a lot of the girls who were punched on the street randomly a few months ago, you saw that trend on TikTok. A lot of that happened in my neighborhood, and it's disappointing that the city has been mismanaged this way. And there's way less of a priority that the local government puts now on quality of life for residents. I don't really understand what the logic is or the strategy is behind what the city government is doing and what the state government is doing, and certainly not how the federal government is treating New York City, but it's not my area of specialty, just a concerned citizen. Recently, I went to my 25-year college reunion, and I have been to all of my college reunions except for the last one, which was our 20th reunion, because I had a work conflict. We had a festival that same weekend. That was 5 years ago, and then obviously the pandemic happened, and we have reunions every 5 years at my college, so it didn't affect our reunion schedule. So this was our first one back since 2018, 2019, and I was nervous. I'm always nervous going to a college reunion because you never know what to expect. The one thing that really gives me reassurance, though, is that I have this theory that if people liked you when you were young, like when you were a teenager, when you were in your early 20s, ostensibly like at your worst, like I was the worst in my teenage years and in my 20s. I mean, I think I can speak for a lot of us. There's very few people who are self-possessed enough and mature enough to not have gone through a terrible phase at that age. I have a theory that if people liked you when you were that age, there is almost nothing you can do to make them not like you as an adult. So there's something magical about those years where you sort of know people as they truly are. You know their id, you know their true self because you see them at their rawest, their most underdeveloped, their most unrefined. And I thought what was really beautiful about this reunion is that we're all in middle age now, and people have been through some stuff. They've A lot of people have gotten divorced, a lot of people have built amazing businesses, a lot of people have lost everything, a lot of people they've been through a lot of people have lost parents. It's it's a very humanizing thing and really powerful to go back to this place where we all have really vivid memories of growing up and becoming like coming of age. Those are really important years, those college years. And to be in the same place as all these people who like knew you when your life was different and during a simpler time when you had fewer responsibilities and fewer children and had gone through less. There was something really powerful about that, and I really, really loved it. I also think that people are in my generation at least, so I'm very late Generation X. I think I really like midlife people. In fact, I came away from my reunion and for a few days I was joking around with my friends and I was saying, I only want to hang out with middle-aged people now because there's something about Gen X and middle age that's really unique. And I also joke that I wonder if it's because we already hate ourselves, and so middle age has not, bulldozed us the way that it may have bulldozed boomers. In a way, I don't know. I don't know enough about that. My friend who I went to high school with, Ada Calhoun, wrote a really popular book that came out a few years ago. I loved it. I would recommend that you read it. I'll link it down in the description box. It's called Why We Can't Sleep. She wrote a piece for Oprah Magazine years ago. And the year she wrote it, it became something, it was like the number 15 most read thing on the internet that year. And the internet is very different now than it was back then, but that's back when people used to read websites. And I think it was also called Why We Can't Sleep. And it was about Generation X women facing midlife and why it felt different than our parents' generation or potentially the millennials who are coming up right behind us and who are entering midlife now. It's a really powerful book. I think it's really relatable. I think Generation X, especially later Generation Xers, are very specific in our worldview because we are a very small generation. We grew up until 18 without the internet, and we saw I'm speaking for myself here mostly because I worked in media for 20 years. We saw the shift, the rise and the fall of media as our primary form of digital media as our primary form of engagement with content. So when I was coming up, we only had newspapers and magazines. I still have very vivid memories of reading the New York Times Magazine on Sundays or convincing my mom to get me a subscription to Sassy, buying the odd copy of or 17 at the supermarket when I had allowance money. And then when we got email and internet in like the late 1990s, early 2000s, there still really wasn't anything on the internet. I remember in college there was yahoo.com, but they would update it like once a day so you can get the weather and maybe do like a tarot card reading online, but with no pictures. I remember the internet before it really had pictures because the pictures would take so long to load. I don't know if you guys remember that when you would like open a page and it wouldn't even be a photo, it'd be like a graphic and it would just load line by line because dial up was so slow. And even when we had, what was it? What did Ethernet come first? I don't remember, but I just remember we had these like big plugs we had to plug into the wall at college to be able to email people. I remember sending an attachment on an email for the first time, and I was blown away that, wow, you can send attachment photos. It was wild. It was a wild time. Okay, so here we're at the join. I never know. I think, yeah, I don't have to do that last one. I can just slip stitch and then another interesting thing they do in this pattern is that at the end, you slip stitch into the second chain in that chain 3, but then you also slip stitch into the chain space, which I do think helps make that join a little bit neater than it otherwise would be. So since I've been back from reunion, I have been thinking about my life in like kind of a different way. I mean, not a drastically different way, but there's some things that I do feel like, okay, I've been to my 25-year college reunion. I'm like seriously in midlife now. I'm closer to 50 than I am to 40. And there's some things that when I look around at my environment and my life, little things I just want to clean up. So something I've been doing, which you might be interested in doing too, is I remember back in the day you could sell your used books on Amazon. And I tried to sign up again for that now. And it was like really complicated, I guess, because I mean, Amazon is different now. Amazon is like a massive platform with like billions of different sellers and it's much more official now. So it's not like before where you could just log in and go to a book page and be like, I have one to sell too. So it was a little bit complicated to sign up. I couldn't sign up. There was I don't know. I couldn't figure it out. I tried for a couple of days. And then I was looking around online and I found this website called Pango Books, and I'll link that down below. It is free to list your used books on there. It is so easy. There's an app, you take a photo, you scan the ISBN number. So you don't even have to fill in any of the basic information because when you scan the book's ISBN number, it auto-populates things like title, author, most of the time it'll populate category and genre. It'll even populate the blurb of the books to help shoppers understand like what this book is about if they just browse and they discover the book on your feed. So I went through my bookshelf. I have a lot of books. These are real books. A lot of people think that this is a fake backdrop behind me, but those are real books. I have so many books. I love books and I was an introverted kid, so I've always loved books. But I have a lot of books that I've acquired over the years or just picked up randomly when I was going through like a weird phase or thought I had an interest in something or thought it might be good. And I have a lot of extra books, books that I also can't keep in my apartment because, like I mentioned, my apartment is very small. So I listed about 105 books on Pango Books. And in the first week, I've already sold 4 or 5 books. And it's so easy. It's You list it. It's super easy to list. I take a bunch of photos. You list the condition of the book. You set a price, and it gives you guidance, which I also really appreciate because I think a lot of those secondhand platforms, the guidance is not there. So you don't really know. You're sort of shooting in the dark when you price a book or price a secondhand item. But it does give you guidance about what's market price, what's not market price, what would be overshooting. And of course, if you have a collector's book or something like that, I think that, price it as you will or as you please. But I'm just happy to even get a few bucks for a book that I spent a lot of money on rather than just donating it somewhere for free or dropping it off at a Goodwill. So I have sold 4 or 5 books in the first week. When your books sell, Pango Books gives you a shipping label to print out. So I just bought some of those like Avery shipping sticky labels at Staples and I print it out. I pop the book into a mailer and I send it off. And it's been so easy. I really like it. And I think I might try to list more books on there. And really, the ulterior motive for listing these books, yeah, okay, sure. I want to like clean them out and like not have as much stuff in my apartment. But the reality is that in the back of my head, I'm like, "Oh, if I get rid of these books, I can get more books," which I'm gonna try to resist in a serious way because I definitely have too many books. I have read most of the books on my bookshelf, but there are books that I have bought, especially when I travel, I get really ambitious, and if I'm in a different country, especially if I'm in England or France, and they have beautiful bookstores there with books that I can read, like, I can't really read many languages or read them well enough where it's comfortable and I feel like I'm having a good time reading. So I do tend to buy books mostly when I'm traveling in England, and I'll come back with a stack of books that I just put on my shelf and I forget to read. So there are some books that I have not read. I should get through those before I get any new ones, but it does open the door for new acquisitions. Right now, I am reading Colleen McCullough's The Thornbirds, which came out in the '80s. And I remember seeing ads for this in my childhood, or like I think it was on television in the early '80s. So it's an epic. It's about a family over many generations, and there's nothing I love more than a good 1980s, 1990s epic. One of my favorite movies is The English Patient. I have watched that movie dozens and dozens of times. In fact, after college, I got a fellowship in Egypt, and this was 1999. So there was nothing on the internet. So I couldn't look anything up. I had the encyclopedia. I had travel guides, like Let's Go travel guides and Lonely Planet travel guides and Fodor's and Cadogan. And I was like, I'll watch movies. And The English Patient, the story is set in Egypt. I think I watched The English Patient like 25 times before I moved to Egypt. And as it turns out, the movie, even though it's set in Egypt, it was filmed in Tunisia. So anyway, I love it still. So I'm reading The Thornbirds, which is an epic set in Australia. It's so good. What else am I doing with my time? You see, it takes so long to do a whole round of this sweater because after doubling the number of stitches, it just takes a long time. But I don't think the sweater will take that long to finish because this is only maybe, well, I started working on it last night and it's now the morning and I haven't done that much work on it. And it's already, because it's kind of a thick yarn and it's double crochet, it's already pretty close to halfway done with the body. Although the sleeves are another question. I heard this term a few months ago that in crochet, you hate getting stuck on sleeve island. And I was like, oh, I totally feel that. I hate being on sleeve island because you're just working on sleeves forever if you're working on sleeve island. But I don't think this sweater will take that long to work up. When I first started crocheting, I thought that it took people weeks to do a sweater, but you can pretty easily crochet a sweater If it's not a complex pattern or a complex stitch, you can pretty easily crochet a sweater in 2 days. If you're using a really thick, chunky yarn, you can do it in 1 day, but I've also found that chunky yarns don't yield the best sweaters or most wearable sweaters. They're very cute and, like, very photogenic, and if you use a glossy, chunky yarn, it's quite beautiful because it's shiny, but they're not really wearable because they don't drape correctly, they don't stay shut, they don't stay on, they slip off, they're just unwieldy. And in the real world, there's just such a huge difference in crochet in real world versus, it's expectations versus reality in crochet. Things can be super photogenic and then not really be functional in the real world. Okay, I'm going to keep going with this project and hopefully I'll have more to report back to you in the next couple of days. Thank you so much for watching. I'm so glad to be crocheting again. I hope I don't injure myself again. I hope you have a great day, and I will see you in the next video.